I loved this article. I liked this article so much I texted you when I was reading it because you found this article.
Yeah.
I'm like, this Time article is baller.
It's really good.
This article comes from Time. Meet the Lithuanian Elves fighting Russian disinformation. So this is a story of, and I love this because they call themselves elves because elves fight trolls.
I love
and
that.
I'm just like,
I love that so much.
thank you.
Yeah, I love
thank
it.
you. And what this is a group of just human beings and not a couple. Like thousands of them.
Yeah.
And they aggregate on Facebook in these sites that are like, puppies for me, or like, I love corgis, or like whatever. They don't call themselves what they are.
Yorkshire Terriers or something.
Right. Yeah. So they aggregate in these sites, and then their whole thing is they go out hunting for trolls. And when they spot trolls that look and behave like bots, they identify that it's a bot, and then they all swarm at that bot and they report it. And they report it, and they report it, and they report it.
And it goes away.
And it's gone.
And YouTube finds it and says, oh shit, let's get it off. It's not YouTube, pardon me, it's Facebook.
Yep.
Facebook finds it and just takes it away.
Yeah.
And
You're doing their work for them.
Their work for them. But this is, they've said that they've wound up catching so many of these bots, and they all sort of, the bots swarm and then they swarm.
What's really interesting about this is that if for Lithuanians, this is an existential practice. This is not like doing something. This is not like Kit Boga, right? Where it's like, this is a good thing to do, and I do it because I have the time, the energy, and the skill, and I should.
And I can keep one guy occupied.
Right.
Yeah.
This is literally an existential practice. The Russian disinformation campaign and the information war that Russia has waged never stopped after the Cold War.
Never.
And this article makes a great point. When the Cold War ended in 91, for the most part, the U.S. and its allies wound down a lot of their information campaign.
Yeah.
And Russia ramped theirs up. And we've been talking about this for years now on this show, that we have been at a propaganda war with Russia. We've talked about this for I don't know how long now. And we're losing.
At least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And we're losing it. In Lithuania, because they're one of the Baltic states, like right there on the edge, and they've never been viewed as a legitimate state by the Russians, they've been under constant attack.
And they're constantly talking about that exact line, which is they've always been part of Russia, which is what they've been saying about Ukraine right now. That's what they're saying about Ukraine constantly. Is they're not part of their own.
They don't have their own legitimate state.
They've always been part of Russia. They're always been part of Russia.
Yep.
And there's a part of this article. It says you would go to Facebook article about Ukraine and you'd see 30 to 50 comments that are almost the same. That Ukraine is fascist, that Ukrainians kill people, that Lithuania should improve relations with Russia, that Lithuania is occupied by NATO, and so on. And then you start checking and realize that they're almost all the same and they're almost all fake. And so it's essentially just a big blast of information. And we talked about this on the show before, and we talk about it in our book, where the more you hear the same thing, the better chance you have of believing it. So if you hear false things over and over and over again, there's a possibility that you may believe it. And that's a tactic too, right? It's not just getting it in front of you. It's getting it in front of you a lot of times. All these 50, 60 comments, if 50, 60 comments are thinking about it, think about this. You remember that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show?
Yeah.
You poll the fucking audience.
Right.
That sort of thing is like, if that many people said it's true, then it's probably true. Well, maybe they're wrong.
Right. Well, there's certainly, it's funny because the poll the audience almost always works because information aggregates, right? But there's no propagandizing as part of it. If
there was 60 trolls in the audience,
then that changes the whole thing.
Changes the calculus.
It changes the whole thing. If you got 60 trolls in an audience of 100, and their goal is to fuck with you, they're gonna pick the wrong answer on purpose, or they're gonna pick fucking wacky answer. So you've got to understand the intentions of these bad actors, and recognize that. Like consuming information, you make a great point, and we talk about this in the book, but it's so important. I'm going to say it again. It's the more you see something, the more you believe it's true. You cannot guard against that.
Yeah.
You cannot do it. Your brain will do that for you. Your brain just does that work in the background. It's running that system in the background.
That's a biosystem, baby.
Yes.
That's base. You can't get out of that. Yeah.
Because most of our decisions that we make subconsciously. We make them in the background. We intuit most of the things that we come to understand about the world that we live in.
Right.
So you have to be very careful not to accidentally consume this shit, because you will accidentally consume it. It's the same thing. and I know you've done this because I've done this, and everybody I know has done this. Have you ever been telling a story and you're like, I read once that, and if you got pressed, where'd you read it?
Yeah.
You would not be able to answer the question. Right?
Because you don't have a footnote in your head.
You have no fucking clue.
Once. Yeah.
You've just internalized some information. Sure. And the I read once is a shorthand for here's something I've come to believe is true and cannot fucking attribute.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something we all do without even thinking about it.
Sure.
I saw a movie once I saw this documentary witch, and you cannot attribute any of that shit. We all do it. It's okay that we do it. But in a world where there is intentional propagandizing as part of a nonstop information war to change our minds and to pollute our thinking, that means we can't afford that anymore.
Right.
It didn't matter as much when it was like coming from these less targeted sources. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big deal.